Hi everybody and welcome back. Last week I read chapter 16 to my novel, Living Nightmare, where Tobin was surprised that a whole week had passed and Hannah was still sharing the room with her. This is longer than any other patient has ever lasted. But she's also becoming increasingly concerned with her new roommate. Hannah seems to be experiencing lost time, where she doesn't remember what she was doing or how she got to certain rooms. Tobin has been keeping quiet, making the promise to Hannah, but how long will she hold out before her concern over her roommate's health has her talking to somebody? Chapter 17. The concept of friendship is odd. You meet a stranger and for some reason decide you want them in your life. You trust them, share pieces of yourself, believe your bond will last a lifetime. How often does it? I had a friend, Ange. Then she left. Sent letters, went quiet. I trusted a stranger once. Can I do it again? Tobin. Tobin awoke around midnight from a nightmare of a wailing mother whose child had been stolen from their home. The woman's desperation and heartbreak dug its nails into her heart, and she fought to sever the link between them. She pushed a hand against her chest, her breathing shallow. When she calmed, she scrubbed tears from her face with her blanket and, out of habit, checked to see if she'd woken Hannah. The bed was empty. Tobin blinked, eyes adjusting to the dark. Hannah's bedding hung off the side of the bed, brushing the floor like she'd been in a hurry to leave. Why, and where to? Patients weren't allowed out of their rooms after 10:30 unless a nurse was with them. Hannah knew that. If a night nurse found Hannah missing when she did room checks, she'd be in a lot of trouble. Unless, was she with a nurse? Tobin had two choices. Find out, or go back to bed. Shit. She closed her eyes. She should stay in bed. There was no point in both of them getting into trouble. Besides, she'd look stupid if Hannah had simply gone to the bathroom with the nurse. Tobin cursed again. The floor was cold against her feet. She didn't bother with her slippers. There wasn't time, and she'd be more stealthier without them. At the bedroom door, she listened for signs of someone in the hallway, then tiptoed past the partially closed doors of patient bedrooms. The dim overhead bulbs provided enough light to prevent her from walking into walls. Soft snores, along with a mumble here and there, saved her from feeling like she was in the deathly silence of a horror scene. The sounds comforted Tobin. She stopped at the end of the hallway, looking around. No sign of Hannah. The place looked deserted, but Tobin knew better. At least 3 night guards sulked around, in addition to the 2 nurses per dormitory who did night checks at regular intervals. If anyone caught her... She pressed her body to the wall, ignoring the warnings her brain shouted. She contemplated her next move. Turning left brought her to the common room, right to Dr. Dawson's office, and past that were the stock rooms. She was considering her next move when the sound of footsteps froze her heart. A guard left the nurse's station and glanced in her direction. She moved closer to the wall as if she might melt into it. The guard walked down the hallway that led to the other 2 psychiatrics' offices. Damn, Hannah. Where was she? Tobin counted to 30, and then, when the guard didn't reappear, she peeked into the bathroom. No Hannah. Seconds ticked by audibly, the sound coming from the large clock that hung in the nurse's break room. It sounded amplified to Tobin's ears, or perhaps her senses were supercharged from worry. She inched further down the corridor and was about to give up when a flicker of movement in the distance caused her to hesitate. Probably another guard, or a nurse, she thought. I should go back to bed before I get caught. After all, if Hannah was dumb enough to leave the room unaccompanied, it would be her own fault if she got into trouble. Tobin squinted. The movement had come from the men's dormitory. Definitely not Hannah, then. If there was one rule not to ever break, it was that one. No going into the opposite gender's dormitory. So why were Tobin's feet moving in that direction? The closer she got, the more perplexed she became. A shape, undeniably female, stood motionless before an open bedroom door in the men's dorm. Tobin shivered as she took in the raven hair and a curvy frame. Hannah. She was humming, Tobin realized as she moved closer. The sound was faint. She only noticed it when she came within a few feet of her roommate. The tune was unfamiliar. There was a lullaby-like feel to the melody, but the lack of emotion and the way Hannah stared into the room with its half-closed door had the hairs on Tobin's arms and neck rising. What the hell was she doing? Tobin warred against the urge to run back to her room. Her hands fisted. She forced one foot forward. She wanted answers. A moment later, she stood shoulder to shoulder with Hannah, who showed no signs that she knew Tobin was there. She peered into the room, holding Hannah's fascination. The room was dark. She dimly made out two forms on the beds, but it was impossible to see who they were. Did it matter? Tobin shook her head. She had to get them back to the room. Hannah. Nothing. Impatience iced her voice as she tried again. Come on, Hannah. We need to go. Hannah couldn't keep doing this. Something had to change. She looked at her roommate's face. What was going on? Could she be sleepwalking? Tobin supposed that was possible, but what about the other times, though? They had happened during the day. Unless she was napping. That seemed unlikely. With the lost times linked to her amnesia, or whatever happened to her before. First things first, Tobin straightened. She had to get Hannah back to her bed. Hoping the girl wouldn't scream and wake the ward, she gave her a quick shake. Hannah jerked. Her mouth opened and closed, confusion becoming angst as she snapped free of the trance and realized where she was. Hey, Tobin whispered. She kept her hand on Hannah's shoulder and squeezed gently. It's okay. Fear dilated Hannah's pupils until nearly all the lavender gave way to blackness. Breathe, Hannah. You're okay, Tobin said. We gotta get back to our room, though. Come on. She took Hannah's hand and began tugging her. What? Shh. Hannah's state of shock made it easy for Tobin to guide her through the hallways. Her roommate followed, blinking rapidly and not saying anything else. They made it back to the room without being seen. Once inside, Tobin heard the sound of footsteps approaching. She pushed Hannah toward her bed. Hannah got in, a little unsteady in her movements. Don't move. Pretend to sleep, Tobin whispered, getting into her own bed. She had just settled in when a nurse entered the room. Tobin held her breath. Her heart thudded loudly. She squeezed her eyes shut. It was the longest minute of her life. After the nurse left, Tobin sat. In hushed tones, she asked what happened. Hannah didn't know. I think it's time we told Dr. Dawson, said Tobin. It's too dangerous. You're walking around at night now. You could hurt yourself, or someone could hurt you. I'm fine. No, you're not. Tobin couldn't believe what she was about to say. I can go with you, if you want, when you tell him. No response. You need to tell him. Okay, fine. Night. When morning came, however, Hannah had changed her mind. She'd been looking for the bathroom, she explained. She'd been half asleep and gotten turned around. She was fine. There was no reason to worry. Lies. See-through like cling wrap. One hard poke and they would break. It was Hannah's choice, right? Doubts festered in Tobin's mind like mold, multiplying each day. She kept her eyes on Hannah to make sure she was all right. It was enough. Hopefully. Session time. Tobin made her way to Dr. Dawson's office with all the speed of a snail stuck in tree sap. His door was open, just a crack. She was about to go inside when she was stopped by his voice, angry and loud. "Michael, you know my feelings on Howard Owens and his trial." Tobin knew that she should let the doctor know she was there, but she moved closer instead. Howard Owens. He was the man Dr. Dawson had mentioned to her parents in January, the one who wanted to run a clinical trial using hypnosis therapy. "I understand, sir," Dr. Dawson grumbled after a pause. He was on the phone, and he was annoyed. Good. She didn't want Howard Owens at Mendwell. "I believe I speak for Phillips and Watts as well when I say the trial he's suggesting isn't the right way to go." Silence. Tobin listened intently as seconds ticked by, wishing she could hear the other end of the conversation. Then, the patients should decide if they want to participate or not just the parents and caregivers." Another pause. When the doctor spoke again, his tone had hardened. "He what? I was told this was a group decision." Tobin's stomach hit her feet. "Yes, fine. I will. Goodbye." There was a bang. She jumped. Her slipper squeaked, rubber sole against tile. "Is someone there?" Dr. Dawson called out. Tobin shot a glance behind her. Escape was tempting. She chewed the inside of her cheek and walked in. "Oh, it's you." Dr. Dawson's face was red. He was at his desk, papers scattered across the surface as if shoved in anger. "What can I help you with?" He began to gather and stack the sheets of paper, putting them into a file and setting it aside. She hesitated. "It's 10:30? "Oh, right. Of course." Clearing his throat, he waved his hand. "Sorry about that. Lost track of time. Come on, then. Sit." Rattled by the phone call, he scratched his beard. "Right. Well, did you hear me on the phone?" he asked when she was seated. She nodded. "How much did you hear?" "That doctor's coming here." He opened a folder, stared at it, closed it. His behavior disturbed her. He was supposed to be the grounded one. "Will I have to see him?" "I'm afraid I don't know. Dr. Owens has the board's approval. Him and his associate." "Associate?" Tobin fidgeted. "Yes, Meredith Mercy. She's a well-known hypnotist," he snorted. "Anyway, if you need to talk, come to me." "Okay," Tobin wrinkled her brow. "Isn't that what I'm supposed to do?" Yes, I mean when Dr. Owens is here. I don't know if it'll impact our sessions. I just want you to know that you can come to me for any reason." He waited until she nodded. Settling back in his chair, he stared ahead. "You know, I chose to work here because the board's emphasis that Mendwell wasn't just here to help patients with mental problems, but to provide a sense of security, to show them that they aren't alone, that people care." "Oh?" She didn't know what to say. Weren't they supposed to be talking about her? Not that she minded. "In most institutes, genders are kept on separate wards. Mendwell's founder wanted something different." He glanced at her. "I am a history buff. Before working here, I researched the conception of this place. Mendwell was opened in the late 1930s by a Dr. Marcus Brown. His younger brother David was strange. Talked a lot about death and believed that the dead control the living. Their father was very religious. He believed David was possessed by the devil." Dr. Dawson paused. "Really?" She brought a leg up, resting her foot on the chair. Concerned about the family's standing in society, David was sent to an asylum. The boy was 14. Dr. Dawson grimaced. In the 30s, shock treatment was as common as mealtimes, and hygiene wasn't a priority. When Marcus saw how his brother was being treated, he was appalled. 12 years older than his brother and a well-off businessman, Marcus decided to open his own home for the mentally disturbed. He turned and gazed out the window. Tobin wanted him to continue, so she said nothing. She hugged her knee to her chest, grateful for Marcus Brown. Shock therapy. The thought of what patients went through in those days was horrifying. Their father cut them from his life, and the Mendwell Institute thrived. Marcus's maxim was that everyone was welcome, no matter what the reason for being there. The Institute stayed in the family for 70 years before it was sold to the public, and a board of directors runs the place now. Not much has changed. The patient's well-being still comes first. Dr. Dawson's voice lowered, and his fist clenched. Tobin wasn't sure whether he remembered she was there. These past couple of years, there's been a subtle shift. Money's the main goal now. It's all about getting patients in and out as fast as possible, letting patients leave before they're ready. Was he talking about Ange? He didn't seem worried when Ange's uncle came for her, although Tobin certainly had been. Oh yeah? She muttered. Dr. Dawson turned startled. You're still here. So he had forgotten about her. He flushed and checked his watch. Oh. Your session ends in 10 minutes. I'm sorry, you should have stopped me. You came here to talk, not to listen to me ramble. Was there anything in particular you wanted to talk about? Yes. Dr. Howard Owens. Hannah. No. He looked relieved, embarrassed about going off on a rant when he was supposed to be helping her. He gave her a weak smile. Off you go then. Before she left, he called her name. Yes? Remember what I said. My door's always open. Nurse Tiffany stopped Tobin on her way back. They were cleaning the patients' rooms, and Tobin was instructed to wait out the hours until lunchtime in the common room. Skeptical, Tobin nodded and walked off. Hannah was alone on the ugly sofa reading. Someone put a rerun of a Friends episode on, but it didn't look like anyone was interested. She made her way over to Hannah. Her progress slowed when she felt eyes upon her, and she looked over her shoulder. Tristan Watkins, the recovering anorexic, was watching her from the table by the window. He was doing that a lot lately, staring at her. She narrowed her eyes. When he noticed her scrutiny, he dropped his head. Hannah flipped a page. Not wanting to interrupt her, Tobin eased down on the other side of the lumpy sofa. Oh hey, Hannah said a few pages later. Did you hear about the hypnotist and the new doc? She put the book between them on the sofa. Supposedly this new doc's a super genius who's going to use hypnosis party trick to help us. Tell me, since when is clucking like a chicken a cure for anything? She rolled her eyes. How had she heard about Dr. Owens already? You don't think it'll work? Who knows? Tobin caught a wisp of hope in her voice. Are you thinking about joining the trial? Hannah shrugged. Maybe. At this point, I'll do anything, even hop on one foot and sing the alphabet backwards. I'm sorry, I can't imagine what this has been like for you. Tobin thought about Dr. Dawson's offer and added, if you ever want to talk or anything, I'm here. Did she sound as awkward as she felt? Hannah must have sensed her unease. Not used to the comforting role, are you? Tobin shook her head. How come, if you don't mind me asking? I've talked to some of the others here, and it's like they're afraid of you. I think it's because you're, I hate to say it, but standoffish? They don't like my nightmares. Tobin watched the TV screen, where Ross was shouting something about being on a break. And because the rumors, she added. Rumors? A few years ago, a patient named Kyle was admitted. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia. He claimed he talked to ghosts. Tobin smiled at Hannah's chortle, but it faded a second later. He didn't like me. Why? Hannah turned sideways, leg tucked to one side. She hated talking about this. Still, better than Hannah got it from her, she figured, and not someone else. Someone else would lie. I don't think I ever spoke to him. I don't talk to anybody much. More patients entered the common room. Melanie with the purple hair and the so-called wind power, according to Ange, snarled at her. She sat at the table to Tristan's left, joined by 2 others. Tobin looked away. Anyway, she continued, he started telling patients the ghost blamed me. I was the reason they died. She shuddered as memories of his rants crashed into her brain. Wow. And people believed him? I don't know if they did. Not true. She knew. They had believed. And hated. His doctor tried to convince him it was his disease talking. He didn't buy it. She brushed a few tears aside, suddenly realizing that she had started crying. Damn it, this is why she didn't talk. Angrily, she rubbed her face. Hannah touched her knee. You don't believe him, right? He was crazy. Schizo, remember? Yeah. That didn't stop the faces of victims from popping into her head, though. Face after terror-ridden face raced through her thoughts. People bullied, beaten, terrorized, killed. Faces of children, women, and men. What if they weren't figments of a fragmented mind? She swallowed, almost choking on the rock of doubt in her throat. Good. That explains their fear. They don't know you. Why don't you let them? I mean, I get it. What happened with Kyle was royally screwed up, but you're letting him win. You can't live that way apart from everyone. At least, I don't think you can, and be happy. Tobin bit her thumbnail. My parents. Hannah frowned. My parents believe emotions are useless. Why was she telling Hannah all this stuff? She shoved her hands under her thighs. People use them to take advantage. Shut up, Tobin, she thought, but she didn't. I was homeschooled. They didn't want me exposed to parents who allowed their kids to believe in fantasy, like Santa Claus. Hannah's eyes widened. Small talk is difficult for me. You didn't seem to have a problem talking to me, although I wouldn't call this small talk, Hannah teased. Tobin turned to face her. Sympathy softened Hannah's eyes. It must be tough, though. Growing up like that. Dr. Dawson thinks the nightmares have something to do with my upbringing. I don't know, though. Tobin made a face, trying to lighten the mood. Maybe I'm just a new kind of crazy. Don't talk like that. Look, this is what's going to happen. We're going to do the quack doctor's trial. We're going to get better. And we're going to leave Mendwell forever. Deal? Hannah held out a hand. Amused, Tobin slipped hers into Hannah's. They shook. Okay, deal. Why not? The insane were allowed to dream after all. Wasn't it what they did best? Well, that's the end of chapter 17 of Living Nightmare. As you can see, there's something going on with Hannah, and it seems to be getting worse. Despite Tobin's urging her to talk to somebody, she doesn't want to. We'll find out next week if Tobin ever gets through to her. Until then, I hope you are enjoying the chapters, and I hope you have an awesome week. Goodbye and take care.